This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case contains disturbing details about a violent crime and may not be appropriate for some listeners. Well, I'm Brant.
I'm Rachel.
And this is Hot Cup
Cold Case,
where every couple weeks we sit down, pour ourselves a hot cup of caffeine, and dive into a cold case. Two things guaranteed to keep you up at night. And tonight, Rach is going to present a cold case that I know nothing about. So I'm excited to hear it. And then I've got a closed case for her that she is completely unaware of.
Yes.
And then we'll wrap up the episode with a strange mugshot story. And Kelsey's not with us tonight, which means
sad day.
I get to wear my stretcher pants for this episode.
So tough.
I will say that this is probably some of the most unbroken eye contact we've had in the past 10 years.
I don't even think you blinked for the past 45 seconds.
We just stare at each other with this mic in between us now. This is how we spend our Friday nights. This is what our marriage has come to. And I love it.
I love it too, but you're getting those crazy eyes.
Like, don't want to close my eyes.
Oh, God.
I don't want to fall asleep.
Shh. Okay. No, I'm sorry, world, for that.
That was
and where did that deep, raspy voice come from?
That was my Steven Tyler impression.
Oh, okay. Well, that was not your voice.
That song just conjured up memories for everybody growing up in the 90s of slow dances at their junior high.
With like that crepe paper
yes.
from the gym ceiling. Do they even sell that stuff anymore?
Jinkos.
Oh my gosh.
Those
were
they had
unbelievable.
those pockets that would go all the way
to
down
the floor. Like, how is that even practical?
I don't know. I feel like it's extremely practical. I don't know why, but
it's like,
I always thought that those deep pockets in Jinkos were for an umbrella. Like, as a kid growing up in the 90s, I could not imagine what else someone would need to put in their pants that would be that long. And I was like, this must be for an umbrella.
Okay, in world, Brant never wore Jinkos. Ever.
I'm even
surprised.
The pleasure of owning a pair of Jinkos.
Yeah,
Let's be clear. Did you ever get pegs on your bike that your friends could ride on?
No, my parents were not about that life.
Well, I never actually had those either, but my friend did. And I remember I borrowed his bike one time, and I was really excited to like chauffeur someone around on these pegs.
This was like Uber before Uber.
We need to bring this back.
But it should really be called Lyft. I mean, that would make more sense if it was Lyft.
How great would it be if you just showed up to pick up somebody who had scheduled an Uber with a bike with pegs in your Jinkos? They'd be like, what year is this?
And you had an umbrella in your back pocket.
It starts raining, you pull the umbrella out. Oh, here.
Bro, you're so crazy.
So, Rach, do you have a clue for me regarding the cold case that you are going to cover tonight?
I guess I could tell you Highway of Hell.
Ooh.
Yes.
It's going to be a good one. We got a good one planned for you folks.
This week I'm bringing you a case taking it way back to our home state of Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas. So, I was born and raised in DFW, and I've never heard of this case before. This 50-mile strip of land from Houston to Galveston also goes by another name, and it's called the Texas Killing Fields.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so you've never heard of this, right?
No.
Okay, I didn't either.
But it sounds like something I should have definitely known about. Like,
I know, we were only like 4 hours from Houston, so
yeah,
it's
as
crazy.
in stay away from the Texas killing fields, Brant.
Yes, I know. Both of our parents are like so overprotective. I can't believe no one said that on the many trips to Houston to the coast that we went on.
Yikes.
At first, it was only this like 25-mile strip of land. It was bordering Calder oil field in League City. It was about like a mile off of the I-45, so in a field on the side of the road. And you know, like the I-45, like there's tons of like long strips of land. And there's nothing there until you get to all the industrial areas.
Oh, there is nothing there. My family and I broke down in Texas one time, and while we were waiting for a tow truck, we watched gazelles frolic through the fields.
Well, so this area started at 25 miles, and then it just kind of grew to where it was really referred to as any field along the I-45 became the Texas killing fields. So I also didn't know this. I mean, where have we been? But there was a movie made about it in 2011 called Texas Killing Fields.
What?
I know. Sam Worthington from Avatar was the lead.
You are blowing my mind.
Well, and that's why yesterday when I was asking you, hey, Sam Worthington was from Avatar, right? Because I saw his face, but I just couldn't remember who he was. Yeah, so he was like the lead in that movie.
So are we going to watch this after this
I know,
podcast?
we're going to have to. I should have watched it before, so I had some more information, but...
Because the best information comes from a Hollywood version of events.
Well, and I'll get into that. So it all started in the 70s, and it went until about 2006, where it kind of abruptly stopped. But over 30 bodies of women ranging from like 12 years old to like the upper 20s have been found in these Texas killing fields.
So over 30 years, 30 bodies.
Yeah, but some were like months apart, some were years apart, some were weeks apart. And this doesn't even include all the teenage girls and like women that have gone missing, like around that area.
What?
That have never been found. So the number could be like vastly higher. Like this is at least 30 women who have been found. The murder started on June 17th, 1971 with a 13-year-old girl named Colette Wilson.
Oh no.
I know. Who went missing after getting off of a bus after school, like at the bus stop. They found her 5 months later in the field with a gunshot wound to her head.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And I'm not going to get into any other details. This could take 30 podcasts right here because there's only over 30 women that have been murdered and or missing. So I can't get into all the specifics, but I will get into a few of them that I found like the most information on.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty deep rabbit hole.
Yes. So I brought to attention Colette because she was what they like kind of dubbed as like the first one. Like she's the first body that was found in the killing fields. But I'm going to talk about like a few other ones too. So Heidi Faye was last seen at a convenience store in Hobbs League City, Texas. So again, it's that stretch from Houston to Galveston. And her remains were found on Calder Road. And this was another specific like field area. This is kind of like a more gruesomer detail, but is gruesomer a word? No.
Gruesomer?
A more gruesome detail. A dog had brought her skull to a nearby home.
Oh my goodness. My first dog brought home some weird stuff. Never a skull. One time, my dog brought home 2 tennis balls in her mouth. At least what I thought was 2 tennis balls.
Oh no.
And upon closer examination, I found out she had actually stuck her head into a bush full of wasps, and they had stung her face.
Oh.
And her snout had swollen to the side so that it looked like she had 2 tennis balls in her mouth.
Oh, that's sad. Was that Ginger?
No, this was Tink.
Oh, I never met Tink.
I stepped on Tink's tail once, and you almost never met me. Tink was not happy. We had a love-hate relationship, as in I loved her, she hated me.
All right, so then a year later, after Heidi went missing, Laura Miller, who was a 16-year-old girl, had went to use a payphone to call her boyfriend. It was about like a half mile from her house. So back in 1984, her family had just moved to the area, and their phone wasn't set up yet. So remember, they don't have cell phones.
Right.
So the only way she could go talk to her boyfriend is if she went to a payphone.
Everything was scarier in the 80s, wasn't it? I feel like movies and television shows like Stranger Things that are set in the 80s are far more scary because back then it was so much easier to be cut off from the world. Someone just had to cut your phone line or...
yeah, and there's no like cell phone pings and
right.
towers.
You could just disappear.
Yeah. So she went to the convenience store to call her boyfriend. I believe her mom had dropped her off and then she was just going to walk back. So no big deal. I mean, this was not out of the normal for the 80s. Well, she never came home, and her remains were found about 60 feet away from where they found Heidi's body the year before. And Heidi was last seen at the same convenience store.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I will talk about Laura's case a little bit longer than the other ones because her dad was really the champion for her case. So all these women are going missing. There's no physical evidence. And I do mean none. Like, there's nothing to link anyone to these murders.
Yikes.
And so Laura's dad, he wants to find justice for his daughter. What happened to her? Who did this? Where is this person? And why have they not been caught? Her dad, Tim Miller, was convinced that this man, Robert Abel, was the murderer. So next to this strip of fields that they had found Laura and Heidi was a horse stable that Abel...
Wait a minute. There's a man named Abel that works at a stable.
Do you want me to call him Robert instead?
No, please call him Stable Abel.
Stable Abel. Well, Stable Abel was a former NASA engineer, and he leased these stables.
NASA engineer?
Yes.
Not what I was picturing Stable Abel to be.
So he leased that space next to these fields where the bodies were found, and he had opened a horse riding business. He became a suspect because of Tim Miller. He kind of pried into his life and put him in the news, essentially. So the police had investigated it. They eventually got a warrant, but they searched his entire property and there was nothing. There was not one shred of physical evidence. There was nothing that could link him to the murders. And also, the guns that he had, the bullets didn't even match some that were used on the women.
Okay.
And they ruled him out. But I watched the 48 Hours about the Texas killing fields. And Tim Miller, he apologized to Robert Abel because he for sure thought he did it. And he kind of ruined his life. You know, when you're wrongly convicted, whether you go to prison or not, like even if you're like a suspect, it can ruin your life.
So what you're saying is he tried to label Abel, who worked at the stable?
Brant! Yes. You're such a dad, I swear.
It just comes with becoming a dad. The
gosh.
dad jokes just...
Yeah, they
come
stop.
naturally now.
Yeah, they never stop.
Please continue.
Thank you. So yeah, it ended up not being him. And so they were kind of back at square one. However, the only like positive thing is Miller's obsession with finding his daughter's killer led him to start his own company. He's the founder of Texas EquiSearch, and he tracks down missing people for a living now. So let's say we know someone who has gone missing and they're doing like those search canvases. like search valleys and fields and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times on horseback or in helicopters. He does all that.
Wow.
And he has recovered dozens of bodies over the last 20 years.
Wow.
So at least something kind of positive came from it. And he has helped other people whose daughters have gone missing in the same Texas killing fields. The next one is Crystal Jean Baker. She went missing from Texas City, and she's actually somehow related to Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I heard that on the 48 Hours. She went missing in 1996. She was 13 years old. She was staying with her grandma, and they got into like an argument, and so she kind of like ran off and went to like a payphone, and I guess she had called her mom to say, like, I'm frustrated. We got into this argument or whatever. And her mom said, you have to go back. So go back. Like, you can't just leave. So she was supposed to go back, and she never made it back.
Oh, my God.
So her mom had called the police to explain, we haven't heard from my daughter. And the police in her county were like, well, she's probably a runaway. This happens all the time. Blah, blah, blah. In another county, they had found her dead and labeled her Jane Doe. And that was the day she went missing. So the day her mom called and is like, something is wrong, my daughter's not here, they found her dead.
The same day?
The same day, but the different counties didn't really talk to each other. This is the only positive closure that we've had on any of these cases. All 30 bodies that have been found. In 2012, there was a breakthrough in her case. So she went missing in 1996.
Wow.
So it took till 2012 for a breakthrough. They did keep DNA samples from Crystal's dress and underwear when they had found her.
Mm-hmm.
Those police officers had run her DNA every now and then. They got a hit.
Wow.
45-year-old Kevin Edison Smith was actually arrested in Louisiana in 2010 for a completely unrelated issue, but Smith was linked to her crime and given life without parole for the murder of Crystal Jean Baker. That's the only case that has been closed. The only one, because there's no evidence. And the FBI has gotten involved, and they believe that it's not a serial killer. Or
really?
If it is, they think it's multiple serial killers just using this stretch of land.
That is a terrifying
Yeah,
thought.
I know.
I don't like that at all.
Like, some of them have patterns, but then some of them don't. And they're totally different, and they're totally random, and the timing is off. And FBI agents, after studying these cases for decades, they don't think it's just one. They think it's more than one person, more than one serial killer, completely unrelated. But the fields just became like a really good dumping ground where they couldn't be caught because it's like a mile from I-45. It's these remote lands that are surrounded by nothing, or it's surrounded by those industrial plants that are loud. And if someone unfortunately was screaming, no one could hear
Oh
them.
my God.
And then the killer could jump back on the highway and never be seen again.
It's weird that multiple horrible people would end up leaving the bodies of their victims in this one place because they all think the same. Ugh.
Well, I know too. And they also were thinking that on the I-45, there's a lot of like truck drivers. So, it could be a truck driver who's doing these like long hauls, can find a woman and dispose of her body, and then he's just out of town in a minute and never comes back, or doesn't come back for months or weeks or whatever.
Yeah, and we have heard cases where that has happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's entirely possible.
What's crazy is there's a federal agent, Don Farone, I think I'm saying that right. He actually wrote the screenplay on the movie. It wasn't like some Hollywood writer. Like, he wrote the screenplay because he was so invested in the case.
Wow, we have to see this movie now.
And Sam Worthington, the lead actor, had said like he took the role because he was like really intrigued by the story and wanted to get the word out on it. The killings abruptly stopped in 2006. So it's just crazy that they don't think one person's responsible for it, but it just stopped all of a sudden. So a church now owns a portion of the killing fields, the land where 4 of the women, 2 of which I mentioned earlier, had been found. And so they have like memorials there now, and they plan to put a park in there. So to try to change, the atmosphere and what.
I gotta be honest with you. We are never taking our daughter to that park.
Yeah, it's so strange.
That is wild.
I know.
Is that the end of the case?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Girl, that's crazy.
Girl.
All right. Are you ready for a closed case?
I am.
You ready for a hint?
I am.
This closed case involves a decorated Vietnam veteran that earned himself a Purple Heart.
Okay.
As well as 45 years in a federal penitentiary.
Oh, no.
Is that how you say that word? Penitentiary?
It's penitentiary.
It's spelled penitentiary.
I always ask you for pronunciation of things.
Why did we decide to start a podcast? So, the closed case I'm going to share with you tonight is actually the follow-up to the D.B. Cooper case that I shared with you in episode 1.
Oh, D.B. Cooper?
Oh, Coopy. A little throwback for you there. If you haven't listened to episode 1, you're going to want to go check it out because this is the follow-up to that case. I cannot handle you bouncing on this ball in front of me right now.
I'm sorry. It helps my back.
It's like the Gong Show in here.
I'll be 31 next week, but I feel like an 80-year-old when it comes to my joints.
I feel like an 80-year-old when I make references to the Gong Show. I've never seen that.
I don't even know what that is.
I actually don't either. I use it because of context. Like, I've heard people say that.
I didn't even know what you were saying, but I wasn't going to get you off on that rabbit trail right now. We've been on enough this evening.
You were just going to go with it.
I was.
You're such a good wife.
I am.
You just stick by me through and through. You're like, you know what? He's wrong, but I'm going to stick with him.
Well, really, I was like, you're going to go down on that plane alone.
On that plane?
Yeah.
No pun intended?
No pun intended.
All right. Here we go. Let's get into this case.
Okay, I'm ready.
Buckle up.
Better go.
Because this is the case of Richard Floyd McCoy, who some believe was the infamous D.B. Cooper. So let me give you a little background about Richard Floyd McCoy. I'm going to take you back to the 1960s in the Wayback Machine. So he was a devout Mormon who lived... I just referenced the Wayback Machine. Why are all of my references...
Brant, you've got an old soul, babe. It's okay. You got an old soul.
I think I'm a reincarnated soul from someone in the 70s or 80s. Okay, here we go. Richard Floyd McCoy was a devout Mormon who moved to Provo, Utah in 1962, where he enrolled at Brigham Young University. But his plans soon changed, and shortly after he enrolled there, he decided that he wanted to drop out of college altogether to join the U.S. Army.
Okay.
So he enlists and gets deployed to Vietnam.
Okay. For
2 years, where he serves as a pilot and a demolitions expert.
Okay.
See where I'm going with this?
Yes, yes.
By 1964, he had become a Green Beret.
What?
And he was eventually wounded in action, which is why he received a Purple Heart. And sent home, he was sent back to the States to recover. And that's where he decided to return to Brigham Young University to continue his studies. And he met a girl named Karen Burns and fell in love.
Oh, love.
But a short time later, he chose to serve another tour in Vietnam, which is crazy. And it was on that tour that his courageous acts of valor earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross Award. I actually looked into this.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
He flew a helicopter into the dense fog of an area in Vietnam that was under fire by the Viet Cong.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he had no maps or anything of the area, he continued to make passes and fire rockets at the Viet Cong until he was all out of rockets. And he ended up driving them back and saving the people who were trying to defend that
Oh,
compound
wow.
from the Viet Cong, and single-handedly took out 20 members of the Viet Cong in his helicopter while under heavy fire from them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So he returns home after that and marries his college sweetheart, Karen. And together they have 2 children. I think I'm going to say this right. Shantae and Richard Jr. I felt like the first name was like really creative, and then the second one. Moving on.
Okay.
So McCoy began to consider serving a 3rd tour in Vietnam, but Karen actually talked him out of it for the sake of their new family.
Yeah.
So instead, he volunteered as a warrant officer with the Utah National Guard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he resumed his studies at Brigham Young University to pursue a career in the FBI or CIA, which you will see is very ironic in this story. He also served as a Mormon Sunday school teacher on the weekends, and when he wasn't doing that, he was skydiving in his free time.
Okay, I see lots of parallels here.
Uh-huh. So, by 1971, though, trouble was brewing at home.
Uh-oh.
Okay? The McCoys had become almost completely financially dependent on Karen's salary to support their family.
Oh.
And she was actually considering divorce in the midst of their financial problems. So by the end of that year, by the end of 1971, news of D.B. Cooper's skyjacking of Northwest Orient Airlines flight number 305 was everywhere. And it was around that time that one of McCoy's friends, Robert Van Yperen, he recalls McCoy telling him D.B. Cooper should have asked for more money. Remember, D.B. Cooper asked for $200,000. McCoy made the comment, "I've got an even better plan for hijacking a plane, and if I did it, I would ask for $500,000." So that was just kind of a strange comment, but Robert didn't think much of it. But from that moment on, McCoy actually began to dream of what it would be like to pull off the perfect skyjacking, to save his marriage, his family from the crushing weight of their financial crisis, and I imagine to possibly just feel like a hero again.
Right.
You know? So McCoy actually devises a plan that he believes is the perfect skyjacking. And there's only one problem. He needs to ask his wife Karen for $500.
Oh no.
Which could be a big problem.
Well,
Remember, he's not bringing home any money.
Well, and what was $500 back then?
It would have amounted to thousands.
Yeah.
That he needed for plane tickets.
Yeah, he's going to get in trouble for that.
Guns, a parachute, a disguise. So he goes through with it and shares his plan with Karen, who, believe it or not, agrees to purchase everything for him.
She was in on it. She's like, well, finally you're getting your crap together and you're going to help us around the house.
She's like, oh, you want to pull your weight around here now?
Well, it's about time. Sure, I'll help you.
So I think some reports that I read said Karen never actually thought he would go through with it, which is even more hilarious to me. If she just had like $500 to throw around and was like, I'm going to give it to him just to see what happens, you know?
Yeah, I doubt that. I don't believe that. If she helped him, I believe that she was hoping it would go through, because if you're already mad that he's not pulling his weight around the house, you're mad that he doesn't make any money, you're considering leaving him over it. Why would you give him $500?
This is what I have to say about Karen. I don't think Karen had anything to lose either way. Either she gives him $500 and he comes home with millions, or she gives him $500 and watches her husband make a fool of himself. Either way, Karen's the real hero of the story, guys. Once again, let's just give it up for the real hero. She's a smart woman.
Yes.
Me and Karen would have got along. Okay, so on April 7th, 1972, this is less than 5 months after D.B. Cooper skyjacked flight number 305, Karen actually drove Richard to the Salt Lake International Airport and dropped him off.
Yeah, she's in on it.
Yeah, some reports that I read said that they actually argued the whole way. She didn't think he was actually going to go through with this.
But she still took him?
But she drove him the 50 miles to the airport and dropped him off, which I have to say, Rach, if you were dropping me off or something like this, I know I would find like sweet little notes packed in my luggage. Like, hope the hijacking goes well. Remember to eat your snacks. You for sure would have put some chips in there.
Yeah, I would have given you snacks.
This is in case the plane doesn't serve peanuts. You take such good care of me. I can only hope that everyone finds their Rachel.
Oh, thank you, babe.
As opposed to their Karen. So,
are your deadbeat, what's the name, Robert?
Richard?
Richard.
Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Karen not only purchased all of the equipment Richard would need, she also typed up the instructions for the pilots on her typewriter.
Okay.
So, using the name James Johnson, McCoy booked a seat on flight number 855, which was a Boeing 727. It's the same type of plane D.B. Cooper hijacked because it has that fuselage ramp that you can lower from the back and jump out of. And this plane was en route to California. So he boards the airplane, makes his way to his seat, 20D, which is located at the rear of the plane. And a few moments later, a gentleman enters the cabin and announces to all the passengers that an envelope has been left behind in the airport boarding area. And it's at that moment that McCoy realizes he's missing the envelope with the instructions his wife had typed up for the pilots.
What a dum-dum.
And so he tries to stay cool, and he just thanks the man for returning it to him and takes his seat, and nobody was the wiser.
No, this sounds like D.B. Cooper's dumb brother who's trying to do something and can't get his crap together.
I think this guy was a D.B. Cooper wannabe.
Yeah,
but we'll get into that in just a few moments.
Okay.
So McCoy then enters the airplane's lavatory and dons his disguise. And he actually remains in the bathroom until one of the pilots eventually asks him to return to his seat in preparation for takeoff. I'm assuming he wanted to hang out in there because he wanted people to think when he came back to his seat wearing a disguise that he was a different person.
Yeah.
So he emerges from the lavatory and he's wearing a wig and a mustache. And 20 minutes after takeoff, the cabin crew begins receiving reports that a passenger on board is carrying a hand grenade.
Oh.
And they actually asked an off-duty pilot who was on board that evening to assess the situation by casually roaming the cabin and checking out the sitch. That was a Kim Possible throwback.
Oh my gosh.
So as he approached the back of the plane, this off-duty pilot, McCoy pulls out a pistol.
Oh, Lord.
And demands that one of the flight attendants deliver an envelope to the captain. And then he also directs everyone sitting around him in the immediate rows around him to make their way to first class.
You get an upgrade. You get an upgrade. You get an upgrade.
And you get first class. So the envelope is delivered to the captain, and contained in the envelope, the captain finds a World War II grenade pin and a .45 caliber bullet with a note that simply read, "Grenade pin pulled, pistol loaded."
Oh gosh.
Isn't that wild?
That is not cool.
I think it is
McCoy.
very cool. And by not cool, we mean so cool.
That was Karen. Karen wrote that.
That was Karen's idea.
That was Karen.
She has a flair for the dramatic.
Oh, God.
So the envelope also contained a 2-page note that directed the flight crew to remain stationed in the cockpit. And then the captain was instructed to notify authorities that upon their arrival at the San Francisco International Airport, the hijacker was demanding the plane be refueled and $500,000 in cash be delivered to the runway along with 4 parachutes.
Okay.
So just like the D.B. Cooper case,
Right.
but $500,000.
Right.
Hours later, this is after the Boeing 727 has touched down, all of McCoy's demands have been met. He demands that all the luggage be removed from the plane's cargo hold. And then he released all of the passengers and one member of the flight crew. And then he provided them with his baggage claim ticket so they could deliver his luggage to the cabin.
Oh, that's so nice of him.
And the reason why he did that is because in his luggage,
was
he
Karen?
Did not see that coming. I did not. That one caught me off guard. In his luggage, he had stowed his own personal skydiving equipment. So by this time, night had fallen, and McCoy then used the aircraft's intercom system to summon another member of the flight crew from the cockpit where they had been sequestered, and he then provided them with another note with instructions for the captain. And the note directed the crew to fly east, maintaining a speed of 180 knots at an altitude of 16,000 feet. Very specific.
Yeah, just like D.B. Cooper's. It was
Right.
very specific.
And we know McCoy has aviation experience.
Right.
And then he warned authorities that if any aircraft were seen attempting to follow the plane, he would detonate a hidden explosive device on board. So in light of the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, which had occurred only 5 months earlier, as I said, the Boeing 727s in that day had all been equipped with a peephole in the cockpit door so that the crew could keep an eye on the cabin in case of a threat.
Right.
But McCoy was aware of this new feature, and he had placed a piece of tape over the door's peephole. So the second officer on board was actually able to spy on McCoy through a gap at the base of the door. And he actually watched as McCoy unpacked his luggage and outfitted himself with a jumpsuit, a helmet, and one of the parachutes. And then McCoy delivered one final note to the flight crew, and he actually demanded to know the cockpit's instrument readings for altitude, wind speed, and weather conditions. And then he also wanted all of the notes he had given them back, in an effort to confiscate any evidence. He then lowers the aircraft's fuselage ramp and, just like D.B. Cooper, jumps into the night sky. Except we're going to see Richard Floyd McCoy again.
All right.
So when all seemed quiet, one of the flight crew members carefully crept out from the cockpit and found the cabin was empty. The pilots then diverted their flight to the Salt Lake City International Airport, where the FBI was waiting to search the aircraft for potential evidence. They were able to lift a fingerprint from an airline magazine that McCoy had thumbed through and left behind. And one of the flight crew members had actually managed to keep one of McCoy's handwritten notes for investigators, which is a risky move. Meanwhile, police searched the countryside that night, but found no sign of the hijacker. The next day, McCoy was actually expected to report for duty with the National Guard. So he shows up and is actually asked to pilot a helicopter in the search for the hijacker.
No!
So he is flying through the sky in search of himself.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And you gotta imagine that at this point, he's probably feeling pretty confident. Like, he knows in that moment, he's not even on the FBI's radar. Right. He's a part of the investigation.
Right.
So unbeknownst to him, though, remember Robert, his friend who he had told
he would go for 500,000?
Right.
Yeah.
His friend Robert was beginning to connect some dots. See, what I didn't tell you about Robert is that Robert was also a police officer.
Oh, no. See, I don't think this is D.B. Cooper. He just seemed way smarter, slicker.
Right?
With a brain.
Right. That's what I feel. So upon hearing the news of the skyjacking in progress, Robert actually receives a call from McCoy's sister-in-law. She had also learned of the hijacking and was trying to reach McCoy and couldn't get a hold of him. And so when Robert learns that there's a skyjacking in progress and McCoy doesn't appear to be home that night, and the skyjacker was asking for 500,000, he decides to contact the FBI. So now the FBI have a name. Right? Meanwhile, police
people get cocky. They get cocky.
Pride comes before the fall.
They want to tell everybody their business. This happens in Survivor all the time. They get their little advantages, and they always have to tell someone.
I just had a great idea for a new television show. It's Survivor, but instead of on an island, you're on a plane. And every time you vote someone off, they
have
literally
to
jump.
Don't sell our idea.
Sir Skyver.
Sir Skyver, you're so stupid.
Trademark. Anyways. Meanwhile, police are receiving a report from a diner just outside of Provo, Utah, where a server says that she sold a milkshake to a hitchhiker in a jumpsuit around 11:30 the night of the hijacking. The FBI immediately followed up on this report, and they provided her with a photograph of McCoy. Because remember, they have his name at this point.
Right.
And she recognizes him as the man in the jumpsuit.
Who goes and gets a milkshake at a diner after they just did a skyjacking?
What's the first thing you would buy if you suddenly came into $500,000?
I'd have been like, take me to a steakhouse, please.
I started thinking about it, and I was like, honestly, you can't go wrong with a milkshake. And she probably reported him because he didn't leave a good tip. She was like, yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah, this sounds like McCoy. If Karen would have been there, I just feel like this would have gone better.
Well, he was hitchhiking, and he actually paid, I think, a 16-year-old kid $5 to drive him into town. And so police received that report as well. And so they're beginning to hone in on McCoy. And so McCoy is called in for questioning and fingerprinted. And the Army actually provided investigators with samples of his handwriting, which they had on file. And of course, everything was a match.
Oh, Lord.
Everything matches. So 3 days after the skyjacking, on April 10th, 1972, McCoy is arrested at his home, where investigators also discovered a cardboard box containing not $500,000, but $499,970. So there was $30 missing.
That milkshake cost $30?
Maybe he did tip her pretty well.
Hopefully.
So 2 months later, McCoy is found guilty, obviously, and sentenced to 45 years in prison. This highly decorated Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
For a short time, the FBI did consider that he may have been the infamous D.B. Cooper, but they eventually dismissed him as a person of interest.
Yeah, because he sounds like DB's dum-dum brother. Who can't...
DB blooper. But this is interesting. The head of the FBI office in Utah at the time, Special Agent Russell Callum, actually published a book about McCoy titled D.B. Cooper, The Real McCoy, in which he outlines why he personally is convinced that McCoy was D.B. Cooper. So one of the things that he notes in his book is that both D.B. Cooper and McCoy were both heard using the phrase, no funny stuff, which doesn't seem like a slam dunk for me. Needless to say, it is a very cool thing to say as a criminal. Give me $500,000 and no funny stuff. I would be saying that a lot as well. But he also said that photos of the black necktie that D.B. Cooper had left behind were provided to McCoy's own family. And they said that necktie was remarkably similar to a necktie McCoy owned.
No, but it's black. I think that's a stretch.
Yeah. Not only that, not to taint D.B. Cooper's reputation, the necktie was a clip-on. Did I mention that?
Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, D.B., no. You're like McCoy. I mean, Lord.
D.B. Cooper was just one of us.
Oh,
He's the everyman. He's the everyman's hero. So Special Agent Callum believes that McCoy lost the money he originally acquired from the FBI when he skyjacked flight number 305 as D.B. Cooper. Because remember, that money was eventually recovered years later and had obviously been in the elements for quite some time, or at least a portion of that money was recovered. So he believes that McCoy, acting as D.B. Cooper, lost the money the first time and had to hijack
again
another plane. I forgot to mention this too in episode 1, but did you know that when the FBI gave D.B. Cooper those bags full of money, they strategically removed the zippers on them.
Oh, that's smart.
Which is why D.B. Cooper was trying to strap the money to himself, because he had no way of getting the money to the ground. And this is another reason why Special Agent Callum thinks that McCoy might be D.B. Cooper, because McCoy brought his own equipment, almost as if D.B. Cooper was improving on the mistakes he had made.
Yeah, but
previously.
then made so many more.
Made so many
ones.
new ones, right?
Yes.
Primarily telling a cop before you did it that you were gonna do it.
Well, I mean, unless he just got super lucky the first time and thought, oh, I could do better the second time.
Right.
But
so
I don't know.
Others argue that McCoy was just a copycat, which is kind of what I lean towards.
Yeah.
And this is why. McCoy's skyjacking was actually only one of 7 skyjackings involving parachutes that were attempted in the 5 months following D.B. Cooper's heist.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so at least 7 other times people thought, that's a great idea.
I could do this.
I could do that. But the story doesn't end there.
Oh, okay.
So 2 years later, while imprisoned in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, McCoy fashions a fake handgun from some dental paste that he had stolen from the prison's dental clinic.
Okay, does that mean toothpaste?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if it was like maybe some, why'd you call it dental paste? I mean, what kind
Once again, I'm an 80-year-old soul.
Yes, you are. I thought it was like Fix-A-Dent for dentures or something. Like, what is dental paste? Just say toothpaste like a normal person. Gosh. I'm gonna book you into like a retired living place soon.
He then commandeered a garbage truck with the help of 3 other inmates and escaped the federal penitentiary by crashing through a gate.
Okay.
And together they actually drove about 16 miles before abandoning the garbage truck for another family's car. And they left the man and 2 women that they found inside the car bound unharmed on the side of the road and disappeared into the Pennsylvania hills. McCoy actually managed to stay on the run for 3 months before federal agents tracked him to his hideout in Virginia Beach, Virginia. But this time McCoy had no plans of returning to prison. And on November 9th, 1964, he opened fire on the officers and was killed by a shotgun blast during the shootout.
Oh, no.
So McCoy went out guns blazing, and that is the closed case.
Okay, I thought you were about to tell me, but there's more. Like, how?
Let me tell you about Karen now.
Yeah, what happened to Karen?
So some reports that I read actually said that the book that was written by the special agent, the FBI special agent, Callum, she actually sued for slander or something, saying that they had damaged her reputation. And I think she actually walked away with over $100,000 in settlements. So honestly, it's a happy ending for Karen.
Karen, once again, the true hero here.
Are you ready for a mugshot story?
I am.
Our mugshot tonight is brought to you by Brazilian prison officials.
All right.
Who actually posted a video earlier this year that I'm going to show you.
Oh, Lord.
But before I do, let me set this up.
Okay.
42-year-old Clauvina da Silva, or Shorty, as he's known on the streets of Brazil.
All right.
He's actually a feared leader of the Red Command, which is one of the most infamous drug trafficking organizations in all of Brazil. He was actually apprehended and sentenced to 73 years in prison. But in 2013, Shorty was one of 30 inmates that managed to escape from a prison in Rio by accessing the facility's sewage system. Mm-hmm. He and some other inmates had managed to unearth a subterranean sewage pipe that was located 15 feet beneath the prison, and they all literally swam through sewage to freedom.
Ew, that's disgusting.
Right? But not long after, he was caught and moved to a new prison outside of Rio. That brings me to this video. So earlier this year, Da Silva's 19-year-old daughter, Anna, came to see him during the prison's visiting hours. But as she was leaving, prison officials noticed the teenage girl was acting strange. And upon taking a closer look, officers discovered she wasn't a teenage girl at all.
What?
42-year-old Clauvina da Silva had somehow disguised himself as his 19-year-old daughter.
What?
And had convinced her to take his place
No.
in the prison.
No.
Father of the year right there.
Does that?
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
He manipulated her into taking his spot. So prison officials released this video of Da Silva wearing this disguise, and it is wild. I'm going to show it to you now. Look at this.
God, it's so creepy. The mask is actually pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah, they believe that the mask and the wig was actually smuggled into the prison by another visitor, possibly a family member or a friend of Da Silva's, who was pregnant. So she may have been able to hide it beneath her clothing.
That's crazy.
So in this video, Da Silva is seen...
He even put her bra on. Like, what a weirdo.
That was my thought, too. Like, he was really committed to this disguise.
Yes, he was.
He not only, like, puts on his teenage daughter's really tight shirt and jeans, but, like, goes ahead and puts on the bra as well.
Oh, my God.
Which means he left his braless 19-year-old daughter in a Brazilian prison full of men.
Well, and how was that? I want to talk to the daughter. If you're out there, I want to talk to you.
Well, she probably speaks Spanish, so isn't that what they speak in Brazil? Why do we do a podcast?
Why do we do a podcast? No, I don't think it's Spanish. Isn't it, I wanted to say Portuguese.
I think Portuguese might be right. Yeah, Portuguese.
Yes.
For the win.
Okay.
Wow, we just failed at a high five gloriously. Gloriously. I'm so glad our listeners did not get to see that.
God.
I think I just called our listeners our sinners.
And I'm about to go under the table again.
Oh my God.
Don't pull me towards.
Oh, I'll push you back.
Oh, ow, my feet are stuck.
Oh no.
Okay.
I saw the panic in your face as you rolled off that
was
ball.
Like rolling under the table.
I just spilled my tea because as you rolled off of your bouncy ball, you grabbed the desk and sent my tea flying from its cup.
Yeah.
Did you just wipe that up with your sleeve?
Yes.
That's a mom move.
It was
there.
a mom move. You're right. Well,
the only
keep
thing
it from whining.
better than that is if you had licked your thumb and wiped some mustard stain from the corner of my mouth. Did your mom ever do that?
Gross. No, my mom would have been like, go get a towel.
My mom used to do that and it would gross me out. I was like, we were one step away from having French kissed. You'd literally just put your saliva on my face. I literally have nightmares about it.
Oh my God.
Well, on that disaster.
Oh my God.
What do you say we call this episode a wrap?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast. We're also on YouTube. Or you can email us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you, whether it's just saying hi or suggesting cases for us. We are also collecting personal stories from anyone who's had a criminal encounter that we could share on the podcast. I think all of us have some personal stories that we're going to share in later episodes. So we're going to be collecting those stories and sharing those later. So if you have a criminal encounter or a criminal story, please submit it. We would love to hear it. And also, please, please, please rate us.
Yes.
If you ever need your mug filled,
Or your spine chilled.
this is Hot Cup.
Cold case. We're not even going to attempt to do another high five.
Definitely not. We're going to need to rehearse that.
Yeah.
What was that?
I thought there was a bug coming towards me.
But there was nothing?
There wasn't anything.
There was absolutely nothing.
No.
I just saw you whip your head.
Well, it scared me.
Thought you were about to nay-nay. You're about to roll right off that bouncy
I
ball
know.
again.